The whistle screamed sharp and final, cutting through the humid Virginia air like a blade. Lila Bennett, 18, stood frozen on the soccer field, her cleats sinking into the grass, as her teammates' cheers faded into a suffocating silence. They just won the state championship, but the coach's words, "You're off the team, Bennett," hit harder than any victory. It wasn't her missed penalty kick or her late arrival to practice. It was the photo someone had posted online. Lila laughing, her arm around a girl at a diner, their faces too close for the small-town whispers to ignore. The caption read, "Lila's little secret." By morning, the team's group chat was a war zone of slurs and accusations, and Coach Hargrove, a man who preached team unity, called her into his office. "We can't have distractions," he said, avoiding her eyes. "You understand." Lila didn't understand. She'd given everything to the Crestwood High Stingers, her sweat, her dreams, her heart. But being a lesbian in a town where church pews dictated morality was a sin worse than losing. She walked off the field that day, her jersey still damp with pride, and swore she'd never set foot in that stadium again. Crestwood didn't want her. Fine. She'd leave. But the sting of betrayal lingered, a bruise that pulsed with every memory of the game she loved. 10 years later, Lila stood in a sleek Richmond office, her architectural portfolio spread across a mahogany desk. At 28, she was no longer the lanky teenager who'd been cast out. Her chestnut hair was cropped short, her hazel eyes sharp with ambition. She clawed her way through college, earning a degree in architecture from Virginia Tech, then built a name for herself designing community spaces that whispered inclusion. Her latest project? A stadium renovation in Crestwood, her hometown. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same town that had shunned her now needed her expertise to save their crumbling sports complex. "Lila, you don't have to take this," her colleague Marcus said, leaning against her desk. "Crestwood doesn't deserve you. Let someone else deal with their mess." Lila traced the blueprint of the old stadium, its familiar lines stirring memories of cheering crowds and the ache of exclusion. "I'm not doing it for them," she said quietly. "I'm doing it for me." The decision wasn't easy. Returning to Crestwood meant facing ghosts. The teammates who'd turned their backs, the coach who'd dismissed her, the town that had whispered deviant behind her back. But it also meant proving something not just to them, but to the girl she'd been, the one who'd walked away with her head down. Lila packed her bags and drove the 3 hours from Richmond to Crestwood, her heart a tangled knot of defiance and dread. The town hadn't changed much. Same brick storefronts, same church steeple piercing the sky, same judgmental glances from folks who recognized her. The stadium, though, was a wreck. The bleachers sagged, the field was patchy, and the scoreboard flickered like a dying star. Lila's firm had been hired to redesign it from the ground up, a project funded by a desperate school board hoping to revive community spirit. She met with the board on her first day, her portfolio brimming with sleek, modern designs that prioritized accessibility and inclusivity Crestwood had never embraced. "Ms. Bennett," said Dr. Ellis, the board president, adjusting his glasses, "we're counting on you to make this place a symbol of pride again." Lila bit back a retort. Pride. The word felt hollow here. "I'll make it functional," she said. "Beautiful even. But it'll be my vision." That night, she wandered to the edge of the old field, the grass crunching under her boots. Memories flooded back. The roar of the crowd, the thrill of a perfect pass, the girl she'd loved in secret. Her name was Sarah, a cheerleader with a laugh like summer rain. They'd stolen moments in the locker room, their kisses quick and forbidden. When the photo leaked, Sarah had vanished, too scared to face the fallout. Lila hadn't blamed her, but the loneliness had carved a hole in her chest. As she stood there, a voice broke the silence. "Lila? Lila Bennett." She turned to see a woman with long blonde hair, her silhouette framed by the fading daylight. Emery Cole, 30, stood with a tentative smile, her blue eyes catching the last of the sun. She wore a denim jacket over a simple skirt, her presence both familiar and startling. Emery had been a substitute teacher at Crestwood High during Lila's senior year, only a few years older but worlds apart in confidence. She'd been the one adult who hadn't looked at Lila like she was broken. "Emery," Lila said, her voice catching, "what are you doing here?" "I live here now," Emery replied, stepping closer. "Heard you were back. The stadium project, right?" Lila nodded, her throat tight. Emery's gaze held hers steady and warm, stirring something Lila hadn't felt in years. It's complicated, she admitted. Emery's smile softened. I bet. But you're here. That's something. They talked as the sky darkened, the conversation easy yet charged with unspoken history. Emery had left teaching to run a local bookstore, a haven for kids who didn't fit Crestwood's mold. She'd stayed in town, fighting her own quiet battles for acceptance. Lila found herself opening up, the weight of her past spilling out, the pain of being kicked off the team, the drive to prove herself, the fear of returning. Emery listened, her presence a balm to old wounds. I always admired you, Emery said, her voice low. You were so fierce back then, even when they tried to break you. Lila's heart stuttered. I wasn't fierce. I was terrified. Sometimes those are the same thing, Emery said, her hand brushing Lila's. The touch was fleeting, but it sparked something dangerous and alive. Lila wanted to pull away, to protect herself from the vulnerability Crestwood had taught her to fear. But Emery's eyes held no judgment, only a quiet invitation. For the first time in years, Lila felt seen. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Lila threw herself into the stadium project, sketching designs that blended functionality with beauty, open spaces, vibrant colors, a community hub where everyone could belong. But Crestwood resisted. The school board balked at her extravagant ideas, and whispers of her past resurfaced. She's the one who caused all that trouble, a board member muttered during a meeting. Lila clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. She wasn't here to win their approval. She was here to build something better than their prejudice. Emery became her anchor. They met for coffee at her bookstore, their conversation stretching late into the night. Emery shared stories of her own struggles coming out to her conservative family, carving out a space in a town that didn't always welcome her. Lila found herself drawn to Emery's quiet strength, her ability to find joy despite the scars. One evening, as they sat on the bookstore's worn couch, Emery reached for Lila's hand, her fingers steady and warm. I'm glad you came back, Emery said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lila's breath caught. I'm not sure I am. You will be, Emery said, her eyes locking with Lila's. You're rebuilding more than a stadium. The words lingered, heavy with promise. Lila felt the pull between them, a current too strong to ignore. But Crestwood's shadow loomed, and the weight of her past made her hesitate. Could she trust this feeling? Could she trust herself? As the stadium project gained momentum, so did the town's scrutiny. Old teammates, now parents and local business owners, watched Lila with suspicion. Coach Hargrove, still a fixture at Crestwood High, avoided her entirely. But Lila pressed on, her designs taking shape in steel and glass, a testament to resilience. She and Emery grew closer, their connection a quiet rebellion against the town's lingering judgment. Yet the past wasn't done with Lila. A single email, anonymous and venomous, landed in her inbox one night. You don't belong here. Leave before you ruin everything. The words hit like a punch, dragging her back to that day on the field. Lila stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She'd fought too hard to let this stop her. But as she looked at Emery, laughing softly as she shelved books, Lila wondered if staying meant risking not just her heart, but Emery's too. The email's words burned into Lila's mind, each syllable a ghost of the rejection she'd faced a decade ago. She sat in her temporary Crestwood apartment, the glow of her laptop casting shadows on the bare walls. Outside, the town slept, oblivious to the storm brewing in her chest. She hadn't told Emery about the email. Not yet. Emery's bookstore had become their refuge, a place where Lila could forget the town's prying eyes and lose herself in the warmth of Emery's laughter. But the message was a reminder. Crestwood hadn't changed as much as she'd hoped. The stadium project was her chance to rewrite her story, but the past clung like damp earth, threatening to pull her under. The next morning, Lila arrived at the construction site, her blueprints tucked under her arm. The stadium was taking shape, steel beams rising like a promise, the field smoothed and ready for new turf. Workers bustled, their shouts mingling with the hum of machinery. Lila's vision was clear. A space that welcomed everyone, with accessible seating, vibrant murals, and a community center for youth programs. But the school board's latest meeting had left her uneasy. They'd pushed back on her budget, calling her designs unnecessary and flashy. One member, a former teammate's father, had even suggested hiring a local architect instead. "They don't trust me," Lila told Emery that evening, sipping coffee at the bookstore's counter. The shop was quiet, save for the soft rustle of pages and the scent of old books. Emery leaned closer, her blonde hair catching the lamplight. "They're scared of you," Emery said, her voice steady. "You're showing them what they could have had all along, someone who builds instead of tears down." Lila's lips twitched into a half-smile. "You make it sound noble. I'm just trying to survive this." Emery reached across the counter, her hand covering Lila's. "You're doing more than surviving. You're changing things." The touch lingered, electric and grounding. Lila wanted to lean into it, to let herself fall into the possibility of Emery. But the email's threat echoed, a warning that vulnerability came at a cost. She pulled her hand back, her smile fading. "I got something last night," she said, her voice low. "An email. Anonymous. Telling me to leave." Emery's eyes darkened, her jaw tightening. "Who sent it?" "No idea. Could be anyone in this town." Lila rubbed her temples. "I thought I was past caring what they think, but—" "You're not," Emery finished softly. "And that's okay. It means you're human." Lila met her gaze, the weight of Emery's understanding anchoring her. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, fighting them, fighting myself." Emery stood, rounding the counter to stand beside her. "Then don't fight alone," she said, her voice fierce. "I'm here, Lila. I'm not going anywhere." The words cracked something open in Lila's chest, a warmth she hadn't allowed herself to feel since Sarah. She wanted to believe Emery, to trust that this time, love wouldn't end in betrayal. But Crestwood had taught her to guard her heart, and the email was proof the town's claws were still sharp. The next week, tensions escalated. At a community meeting to unveil the stadium's progress, Lila presented her designs to a packed auditorium. The crowd murmured as she spoke, her voice steady despite the hostility in some faces. She highlighted the community center, designed for kids who felt like outsiders, and the inclusive signage that welcomed all. Most clapped politely, but a group in the back led by a woman Lila recognized as a former teammate, Jenna, whispered loudly, their disdain palpable. Afterward, Jenna cornered her outside. "You think you can waltz back here and play hero?" she spat, her arms crossed. "This town doesn't need your kind of change." Lila's fists clenched, but she kept her voice calm. "My kind of change is a stadium that doesn't fall apart." "You're welcome." Jenna's eyes narrowed. "We know who you are, Lila. Don't think we've forgotten." The words stung, but Lila held her ground. "I haven't forgotten either," she said, turning away. As she walked to her car, her pulse raced, not with fear but with defiance. Jenna's words were a challenge, and Lila wasn't backing down. Emery was waiting at the bookstore when Lila arrived, her face etched with concern. "I heard about the meeting," she said, pulling Lila into a hug. "You okay?" Lila sank into the embrace, the warmth of Emery's arms easing the day's bruises. "I'm tired," she admitted. "But I'm not done." Emery pulled back, her eyes searching Lila's. "Good. Because I'm falling for you, and I need you to keep going." The confession hung between them, raw and unguarded. Lila's breath caught, her heart a wild drumbeat. She'd spent years building walls, but Emery was dismantling them with every word, every touch. "Emery, she started, then stopped, fear and longing warring within her. "Don't say anything," Emery murmured, her hand cupping Lila's cheek. "Just stay." Their lips met, tentative at first, then deepening with a hunger that felt like coming home. The kiss was a rebellion against Crestwood's judgment, a promise that love could be stronger than hate. But as Lila pulled away, the email's threat flashed in her mind. Staying meant fighting, and fighting meant risking everything. The stadium project pushed forward, but so did the resistance. Another anonymous email arrived, this one more specific. "Quit the project, or we'll make sure everyone knows what you are." Lila's stomach churned, but she deleted it, refusing to let fear win. She threw herself into the work, spending long days at the site, refining every detail. The community center took shape, its walls painted with murals of diverse faces, a silent challenge to Crestwood's narrow-mindedness. Emery was her constant, their relationship blossoming in stolen moments, late-night walks, Shared meals, quiet confessions. But the town's hostility grew bolder. Graffiti appeared on the construction site one morning. "No queers here." Lila stared at the red spray paint, her heart sinking. The workers looked to her, waiting for a reaction. She grabbed a can of paint and covered the words herself, her hands shaking but her resolve unbroken. "They're scared of you," Emery said that night, her voice fierce as they sat on Lila's apartment balcony. "You're building something they can't control." Lila looked at her, the moonlight catching Emery's features. "What if they're right? What if I'm pushing too hard?" Emery took her hand, her grip firm. "Then push harder. You're not just rebuilding a stadium, Lila. You're rebuilding us." The words carried Lila through the next weeks, but the pressure mounted. The school board threatened to cut funding, citing community concerns. Whispers of her past grew louder, and Lila felt the weight of every stare, every muttered slur. She began to doubt not her designs, but her place in Crestwood. Could she keep fighting a town that didn't want her? Could she protect Emery from the fallout? One evening as they walked through the half-finished stadium, Emery stopped, her hand tightening around Lila's. "This place," she said, gesturing to the rising stands, "it's you. It's everything you fought for. Don't let them take it." Lila looked at the skeleton of her creation, its lines bold and unapologetic. She thought of the girl she'd been, kicked off the team for loving who she loved. She thought of Emery standing beside her unafraid. And she made a choice. "I won't," she said, her voice steady. "I'm staying." The stadium skeleton loomed against the dawn sky, a testament to Lila's defiance. She stood at the edge of the field, her breath visible in the chilly morning air, as workers arrived to pour concrete for the new concourse. The graffiti was gone, but its echo lingered, a reminder that Crestwood's acceptance was a battle not yet won. Lila's relationship with Emery had become her lifeline, a quiet revolution in a town that thrived on conformity. They stole moments in the bookstore's backroom or on late-night drives, their connection deepening with every shared secret. But the anonymous threats hadn't stopped. A third email arrived, this one with a photo of Lila and Emery walking hand in hand, captioned, "Leave or this goes public." Lila's heart raced as she deleted it, but the fear gnawed at her. Whoever was watching them knew how to hit where it hurt. She didn't tell Emery about this one either. Emery had enough to carry running her bookstore, supporting kids who felt like outcasts, navigating her own place in Crestwood's judgmental web. Lila couldn't bear to add more weight. Instead, she channeled her fear into the stadium, pushing her team to accelerate construction. The community center was nearly complete, its vibrant murals a beacon of inclusivity. Lila imagined kids like her younger self finding refuge there, a place where they wouldn't be cast out for who they were. But Crestwood fought back. At the next school board meeting, a petition circulated, demanding Lila's removal from the project. Community standards, the petition read, a thinly veiled attack on her identity. Jenna, her former teammate, stood at the podium, her voice sharp. "We want someone who represents Crestwood's values," she said, her eyes locking with Lila's. The room buzzed with agreement, and Lila felt the old wound reopen, the sting of being unwanted. Dr. Ellis, the board president, hesitated. "Ms. Bennett's work is exemplary," he said, but his tone wavered. "We'll review the petition and decide next week." Lila left the meeting, her chest tight. She drove to Emery's bookstore, the only place that felt safe. Emery was shelving books, her movements graceful despite the late hour. When she saw Lila's face, she dropped everything, pulling her into the back room. "What happened?" she asked, her hands framing Lila's face. "They want me gone," Lila said, her voice breaking. "The petition. It's about me, not the project. They'll never let me finish." Emery's eyes flashed with anger. "They don't get to decide who you are. You're the best thing that's happened to this town." Lila shook her head, tears threatening. "I thought I could do this, change things, prove them wrong. But what if I'm just making it worse?" Emery pulled her close, her voice fierce. "You're making it better. For every kid who feels like they don't belong. For every person who's been told they're not enough, you're showing them they are." Lila clung to her, the warmth of Emery's words battling the cold fear in her chest. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Not just for me. For us." Emery's lips brushed her forehead. "We're stronger than they are. Together." The next day, Lila returned to the site with renewed determination. She met with her team, refining plans for the stadium's grandstands and ensuring the community center's accessibility features were perfect. But the petition loomed, its threat amplified by a new wave of gossip. Someone had leaked the photo from the email, and it spread like wildfire through Crestwood's social media. Comments poured in, some supportive but most vicious, calling Lila and Emery abominations, outsiders, threats to the town's purity. Lila's phone buzzed with notifications, each one a dagger. She turned it off, focusing on the work, but the weight was crushing. That evening she found Emery at the bookstore, her face pale as she scrolled through her own phone. "They're coming for us both now," Emery said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her fear. Lila's heart sank. "I'm sorry," she said. "I never wanted to drag you into this." Emery stood, crossing the room to take Lila's hands. "I chose this. I chose you. They can't take that from us." Their kiss was fierce, a defiance of the town's hatred, but Lila couldn't shake the dread. The next morning, she arrived at the site to find more graffiti, this time on the community center's walls. "Fags out." The workers stood silent, their discomfort palpable. Lila grabbed a roller and began painting over it, her movements mechanical. One worker, a young man named Carlos, joined her, his silence a quiet show of support. Others followed, and soon the wall was clean, but the message lingered. That afternoon, Lila received a call from Dr. Ellis. "The board's meeting tomorrow," he said. "The petitions gain traction. We need to discuss your role." Lila's stomach dropped. "You're caving," she said, her voice flat. "We're trying to keep the peace," he replied. "It's not personal." "It's always been personal," she snapped, hanging up. She drove to Emery's, her mind a storm. Emery was waiting, her expression a mix of worry and resolve. "What's the plan?" she asked, as if they were soldiers preparing for battle. "I don't know," Lila admitted, her voice raw. "If they fire me, the project's done. My designs, the community center, everything I've fought for." Emery took her hand, her grip fierce. "Then we fight harder. This isn't just your project anymore. It's ours." They spent the night strategizing, drafting a letter to the board outlining the stadium's impact, jobs created, community programs planned, the promise of a space for all. Emery rallied her bookstore's regulars, a small but fierce group of allies, to attend the meeting. Lila reworked her presentation, emphasizing the human cost of exclusion, her voice breaking as she practiced. The morning of the meeting, the auditorium was packed. Lila stood at the podium, her blueprints projected behind her. She spoke of the stadium's potential, of the kids who'd find a home in the community center, of a Crestwood that could embrace everyone. Her eyes found Emery in the crowd, her presence a steady anchor. But Jenna stood again, her voice cutting. "This isn't about the stadium," she said. "It's about who's building it. We don't want her kind here." The room erupted, some cheering, others shouting in protest. Lila's heart pounded, but she held her ground. "My kind," she said, her voice clear, "is someone who loves this town enough to make it better. If you can't see that, you're the ones who don't belong." The crowd fell silent, her words hanging heavy. Dr. Ellis cleared his throat. "We'll vote tomorrow," he said. Meeting adjourned. Lila left the auditorium, Emery at her side, their hands brushing but not quite holding. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, Lila felt the tide shifting. She wasn't alone anymore. The night before the board's vote, Lila couldn't sleep. She sat on her apartment floor, blueprints spread around her like a map of her heart. The stadium was nearly complete, its lines bold, its spaces open, a monument to resilience. But tomorrow could unravel everything. Emery stayed with her, their shoulders touching as they pored over the plans. "Whatever happens," Emery said, her voice soft but firm, "this is yours. They can't take that away." Lila looked at her, the weight of Emery's belief anchoring her. "I want it to be ours," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Emery's eyes softened and she leaned in, their foreheads touching. "It already is," she whispered. The moment felt fragile, a bubble that could burst under Crestwood's scrutiny. But it was theirs and Lila clung to it. They fell asleep tangled together, the blueprints beneath them a testament to their shared fight. The board meeting was a battlefield. The auditorium buzzed with tension, allies and opponents packed shoulder to shoulder. Lila stood at the front, her heart pounding as Dr. Ellis called for the vote. Jenna and her supporters sat in the front row, their stares icy. Emery was in the back, her bookstore regulars around her, their signs reading Build for All and Love Wins. Dr. Ellis read the petition aloud, its words a litany of coded prejudice. Lila's stomach churned, but she kept her chin high. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped to the podium, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "This project isn't about me," she said. "It's about the kids who feel like they don't belong. The ones who get kicked off teams, out of families, out of towns for being who they are. This stadium, this community center's for them. If you vote me out, you're telling them they don't matter." The room was silent, her words sinking in. Emery's eyes met hers, a spark of pride in their depths. Then Jenna stood, her voice sharp. "We're protecting our values," she said. "This town doesn't need your agenda." A murmur of agreement rose, but so did voices of dissent. Carlos, the worker who'd painted over the graffiti, stood. "I've seen Ms. Bennett's work," he said. "She's building something good. You'd be fools to stop her." Others joined in, parents, students, even a few former teammates who'd stayed silent all these years. The room became a cacophony of support and opposition, and Dr. Ellis called for order. "We vote now," he said. The board members whispered among themselves, their faces unreadable. Lila's heart raced as the votes were tallied. Finally, Dr. Ellis stood. "By a margin of 1, Ms. Bennett remains on the project." Relief flooded Lila, but it was bittersweet. The margin was too close, the town too divided. As the crowd dispersed, Emery rushed to her, pulling her into a hug. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," Lila corrected, her voice thick. But the victory felt fragile, the town's hostility a shadow that wouldn't fade. The next weeks were a sprint. Lila threw herself into the final stages of construction, overseeing the installation of the stadium's lights and the community center's furnishings. The threats didn't stop. Another email, more graffiti, but Lila refused to flinch. She and Emery grew bolder, holding hands in public, their love a quiet defiance. The bookstore became a hub for allies, hosting meetings to plan the stadium's opening ceremony. Lila's vision was coming to life, but the cost was steep. One evening, as they walked through the nearly finished stadium, Lila stopped at the community center's entrance. A mural of diverse faces smiled down, their eyes painted with hope. "This is what I wanted," she said, her voice soft. "A place where no one gets left out." Emery squeezed her hand. "You've done that. And more." But the peace was short-lived. 2 days before the opening ceremony, Lila arrived at the site to find the community center vandalized. Windows shattered, paint splattered across the murals, the word "freak" scrawled in black. Lila's knees buckled, the weight of Crestwood's hatred crashing down. Workers gathered, their faces grim, but Carlos stepped forward. "We'll fix it," he said. "Before the ceremony." Lila nodded, her throat tight. She called Emery, who arrived within minutes, her face pale but resolute. Together they cleaned the damage, painting over the hate, repairing what they could. The community rallied, kids from Emery's bookstore, parents who'd spoken up at the meeting, even a few board members. By nightfall, the center was restored, its murals brighter than before. The opening ceremony loomed, and Lila felt the weight of it. This was her chance to show Crestwood what she'd built, not just a stadium, but a legacy. She and Emery planned every detail, from the ribbon cutting to the youth soccer game that would christen the field. But the anonymous emails grew darker, hinting at sabotage. "You won't finish this," the latest read. Lila's fear returned, but so did her resolve. The night before the ceremony, she and Emery sat in the stadium's empty stands, the field glowing under the new lights. "I couldn't have done this without you," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. Emery smiled, her hand finding Lila's. "We're a team. Always will be." Lila leaned into her, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like a vow. Whatever happened tomorrow, they'd face it together. But as they left the stadium, a shadow moved in the parking lot, and Lila's heart stuttered. Someone was watching. The morning of the stadium's opening ceremony dawned bright, the Virginia sky a canvas of hope. Lila stood at the field's edge, her architect's blazer crisp, her heart a mix of pride and dread. The shadow in the parking lot last night had vanished, but its memory lingered, a reminder that Crestwood's acceptance was a fragile thing. The stadium gleam at its sleek lines, vibrant murals, and accessible spaces a testament to Lila's vision. The community center stood proud, its repaired windows catching the sunlight. Emery was by her side, her denim jacket swapped for a soft green dress that made her blue eyes shine. They'd worked tirelessly to make this day perfect, but the threat of sabotage hung heavy. As the crowd gathered, Lila scanned the faces. Families, students, and local officials filled the stands, their murmurs a mix of excitement and skepticism. Dr. Ellis approached, his smile cautious. "You've done something extraordinary, Ms. Bennett," he said. "Let's hope today goes smoothly." Lila nodded, her jaw tight. She and Emery had checked every inch of the stadium at dawn, finding no signs of tampering. But the emails, the graffiti, the shadow, they all whispered danger. She squeezed Emery's hand, drawing strength from her steady presence. The ceremony began with a youth soccer game, kids from Crestwood's diverse neighborhoods laughing as they chased the ball. Lila watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling. This was why she'd fought for them. Emery stood beside her, her smile a quiet triumph. But as the game ended and the ribbon cutting neared, a commotion erupted near the community center. Lila's stomach dropped. She and Emery ran toward the noise, pushing through the crowd. A group of teenagers stood near the entrance, spray cans in hand, the word sinner half painted on the wall. Jenna was there, her face smug as if she'd orchestrated it. Lila's blood boiled, but before she could speak, Emery stepped forward. "Enough," Emery said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This place is for everyone. If you can't handle that, leave." The crowd went silent, all eyes on Emery. The teenagers hesitated, then dropped the cans, shame creeping into their faces. Carlos and other workers moved in, cleaning the paint before it could set. Lila's chest tightened with gratitude but also fear. This wasn't over. Jenna smirked. "You think you've won?" she said to Lila. "This town will never be yours." Lila met her gaze, unflinching. "It's not about me. It's about them." She gestured to the kids, the families, the allies who'd rallied around her. "You're fighting a losing battle." Jenna's face faltered, and she turned away, her supporters trailing behind. The crowd cheered, a wave of support that drowned out the hate. Lila felt Emery's hand in hers, a lifeline in the storm. The ribbon cutting went off without a hitch, the crowd roaring as Lila and Dr. Ellis cut the red ribbon. Speeches followed, with Lila's the last. She stood at the podium, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. 10 years ago, this town told me I didn't belong," she said, her eyes sweeping the stands. "I was kicked off the team for being who I am. But I came back not for revenge, but to build something better. This stadium, this community center, is for everyone who's ever been told they're not enough. It's proof that love, resilience, and inclusion are stronger than hate." The applause was deafening, but Lila's eyes found Emery's, her smile saying more than words ever could. As the ceremony ended, kids flooded the field, their laughter echoing through the stands. Lila and Emery joined them, kicking a soccer ball, their joy a rebellion against the past. Later, as the crowd thinned, Lila and Emery stood alone in the community center, its murals glowing under the soft lights. "You did it," Emery said, her voice thick with pride. "We did it," Lila corrected, pulling her close. "And we're not done." They kissed, the world fading to just the two of them, their love a beacon in Crestwood's shadows. The emails stopped, the graffiti ceased, and though the town wasn't fully won over, the stadium stood as a challenge to its prejudice. Lila had rebuilt more than a structurist rebuilt hope, for herself, for Emery, for every kid who'd walked through those doors. Years later, the stadium thrived, a hub of community and acceptance. Lila and Emery married in its shadow, their vows spoken on the field where Lila had once been cast out. The town didn't fully change, but it learned. And Lila, once the girl kicked off the team, became the woman who rebuilt their stadium stronger not just in steel and concrete, but in love and resilience. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.